What's up? What's up? Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Or nobody. I think I'm just doing a quick little stream tonight. I just wanted to go live and you know, for the holiday. Hope everybody's having a good Thanksgiving. Eating lots of turkey. I got a new little setup I figured out. I have this old TV and I was able to like do a dual monitor setup, which is like it looks so cool. So sorry. I'm just gonna be painting and watching some videos. Very easy stream. Alright, so I like that I can like interact with it on here and then have it just on the TV right here, you know? Oh dang, that's what it looks like for like the default picture. Thanksgiving situation is crazy. So much drama. So much drama in the YOU. TUBE. Alright, oh my god, this TV shakes so much. Well, at least don't mess with the camera. Alright. Yeah, I figured out a way to make this kind of look okay. Alright, the phone's flashlight's on, but I put two pieces of masking tape over it. Alright, let's see what we got. Let's see what we got. Let's go into Abba and Preach again. It's got their funny. Oh, sorry. No audio. Give me a sec. Bring that back. And
All right, today's topic.
there we go.
What's up with that smile?
Nah, man, you're not down with this lawsuit?
What? Oh my God.
Drake
Oh
suing
my
I told
God.
you about
Kendrick?
that shit. I hate them beefs. I hate them Drake beefs. I told you that. I hate them beefs. He beefed with Pusha T, and when Pusha T came with the T, he came back pushing. Oh, let me do like a conference about my son. Yo, is you battling or not? How you funny? Your response is gonna be a conference.
Okay.
Oh shit.
Then I
I'm gonna
let
have to
that
do-
shit slide. And then this thing right here, well, he called me, he said I smell like broccoli. That's a battle. That's a rap battle. He called me a PDF file. Yeah, well, you called him a wife beater. What are we talking about? But it's
Alright, so if I put
defamation.
dark font on
Okay,
this
so
song,
All right,
what?
hold up. Let's give them context.
and then
Chill.
put this
I'm
font
not
on this
done.
song.
Yeah,
Just
but
put
they
this
don't know
font
what's
on
going
this
on.
Go ahead,
So,
go ahead.
if you're not aware, over the course of the last year, there was a big rap battle that went
Well,
down
this is
between
gonna get
Kendrick and Drake. Songs topped the chart. The one that really topped everything was "Not Like Us," in which there was some allegations that Drake was into them young. That went to the top of the charts. I think it's the fastest hip hop song to hit the top of the Spotify charts.
And staying there.
And, for most people, they all agree that, for the most part, Kendrick won the rap battle. Now, this was months ago. Kendrick just dropped an album. And in this period, we find out that Drake decided to pursue legal action against UMG, which is, I think it's the Universal Music
that
Group,
looks way
and
out of focus.
Spotify
What the heck?
for artificially inflating the numbers for Not Like Us. And the lawsuit itself, they allege quite a few things, but I could go through some.
that the
I'll go
focus?
through some of the key allegations. Some of the key allegations are that
No, that's the wait, what?
UMG were using bots to artificially inflate, which
A lot of artists.
Oh, I was in the wrong mode.
most of the hip hop artists, including Drake himself, have
Still
been
looks like shit,
alleged to have
though.
done this. So whether it's true or not, do
Wait,
I
I'm gonna
really
be
care?
painting,
Not
like,
really.
on
It's
these
become an
things.
industry standard. Numbers and stuff like that kind of inflate everything, and UMG and a lot of these big music groups make a lot of money from it. So I don't really care. But again, there's no proof provided in this lawsuit itself. In fact, at one point, you know who they quote? They quote fucking DJ Academics from his podcast. He's dropping again. So I'm like looking at this lawsuit a little bit funny, like, boy, what are you doing? Another thing that they allege is that UMG basically licensed the song to Spotify at a lower fee so that Spotify would ensure that Not Like Us
I
would get
don't know
higher
why
play.
it looks like
Which
that.
again isn't abnormal. In my experience, a lot of record
I gotta get,
companies
like,
will offer their
freaking
songs at a low rate because they just
insanely
want it to
close to get
pop
it
because
to-
they want it to make a lot of noise.
But it's not fair. He's doing
Still
everything
looks-
that everybody's doing.
One thing, according to online sources, okay, this is
Alright,
a
whatever.
lawsuit.
That's
This
as
is
close as
all
I can get it. I don't know.
According
It
to
doesn't
online
really look
sources,
like this.
apparently people were hacking into technologies to reroute traffic towards the song Not Like Us. Some users online reported that when they went to Alexa and asked her to pull out Certified Lover Boy, it would pull up Not Like Us. Certified Lover Boy.
Oh.
Toot, toot, toot.
Certified file. That's what happened. That's crazy. Then he goes on in the lawsuit to just list a bunch of accomplishments of Not Like Us and how
That's gotta just be the AI like search feature going haywire because it's searching the lyric in the song and it's pulling that up, which is weird because you'd think it would pull up the song name first, but I don't know. Unless somebody really did just do that, I can see somebody doing that behind the scenes.
great it's done in terms of numbers. Some of the other stuff that's alleged in there was that there's a huge amount of defamation in regards to the PDF allegations. And I'll say this.
All right, I
it's
need
a
to
rap
zoom
battle.
this out. There's no way I
95%
can
of you
paint it.
rappers just
Oh,
rapping
shit.
about shit you've
What just
never done,
happened?
things you've never done to other people, things that other
think-
people have
I
done to
think the
them, and then you
flashlight
take
just
credit for
overheated
it.
on
Drake
here.
himself called
That's
this
not
dude a
good.
wife beater, didn't he?
That's what I said.
Did
You called the dude a wife beater. A whole ass wife beater. You said a whole bunch of shit.
You said his
Oh,
best
ass
friend was
wife.
sleeping
Oh,
with his
what?
girl.
Now you're
And
gonna
that-
turn around and be like,
It's not true.
to rap battle. You can't do that.
No.
You can't do that. You cannot engage in a rap battle and be like, you know what, I'm gonna do this. And when push comes to shove, you wanna sue. That then it just certifies that you're not top three. There's no big three. There isn't. That's the second time you've done this, my boy.
I'm excited for this lawsuit. I'm excited. There's going to be discovery. Proof is going to come out. Drake going to find out that Kendrick really writes his own music. He's going to be shocked. It's going to be a weird time.
Hey,
Drake going to find out that Kendrick is comfortable with his blackness. He's going to be like, I can't believe what is that. Drake is in an awkward place right now.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think Kendrick is in a weird place. Imagine your biggest op is a nigga named Aubrey. That's crazy. Y'all got to start choosing some harder names. Even Kendrick's last name, I didn't know this until this lawsuit. Mr. Duckworth.
It's great.
That's a wild last name.
No, it's whatever. I don't care about that, but it just get on my nerve when we're in a rap battle and you're like, "Yo, I'm gonna
That is
take
actually
this
pretty
ringer
funny.
and ying ying and hung 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 hung," and then you're like, "I'm gonna call the cops because he said he's gonna kill me." That's what are we doing?
That's where hip hop's at today. You old heads need to get with the times.
You call me a booger face?
I think Kendrick needs to countersue whoever wrote Drake's songs and make sure they come to
This
justice.
And the
nerd-
thing that
I'm
happened is
getting
that
really
you're, mad
tired of this
because, you're
defamation.
mad because he called you a PDF file.
He's mad because everybody loves the song.
You say shit like that
Is it upside
in
down?
your
Why
song.
is my hand so big?
Sometimes your lyrics are weird. So how you mad that someone said what you do say in your song? Of course, he's mad that
Where'd the
everybody
water
loves
go?
it.
But that's the real thing.
It's like,
He's mad that he lost.
yeah, he's walking in the street and everybody calling him a hovey ho.
That's it.
I'd be mad
Hovey
too.
Because if a random person made that statement, he wouldn't care. He's mad that everybody in the zeitgeist is looking at him funny and bumping that song and loving it. That's what he's mad about. He's mad because it's a big fucking L. You could say it's the PDF stuff or whatever it is. He
biggest
was
L
mad
that you can
when they brought up that
actually
shit
have.
about the kid.
100%.
As equally mad as he is now.
100%.
Remember what that after the Pusha T diss, he got on that documentary thing. He looked like he was about to cry in that video.
It wasn't even about battle rap or any of that. It was just the information was too shocking. It was
That's
Talk
why-
about what Pusha T did to him and how he would. How could he talk about my producer's terminal illness?
or obviously the part that hit me the most, which is like wishing like that my friend that has an illness like dies. Like that shit to me is just not really wavy. Like I'm just not really
It's
with
not
that. Like
what?
It's a rap battle, my guy. People say vicious things.
you
That's
say
the saying.
wavy?
You don't like it? Don't get in the fucking ring. This guy's corny,
And
bro.
out of all the people you wanted to
He
fight,
is
you
corny.
chose Pusha
I mean-
T.
You know what?
And then
I gotta say, I got roped into watching Degrassi when I was in high school, in middle school or high school, and there, like that's all I can see whenever I hear about Drake is him, that character he played in the wheelchair. So I can never take him seriously. It's crazy that he thinks anybody will take him seriously. But then again, I bet a lot of people don't know about that. All right. That's oh fuck. Doobie doobie doo
Kendrick.
Nah.
But your next one is gonna be who? Eminem, and then you're gonna be mad. Mad is gonna be some shit. Come on now, B.
I don't think you can be mad at Drake though, because the people chose him.
up.
This is what the people popularized. So at the end of the day, we are the reason he's there. Is it not true?
100%. You know what?
So that's what hip hop wants.
Like
There's
I think there's two different things there: the artistry and the way that he's acting. I can't deny the fact that he's good because, well, the numbers show it, and there's a lot of people that like it. You know what I mean? Well, a lot of people smoke crack. It doesn't mean that it's good. I understand, concur. But I'm gonna say, hey, I appreciate the dude, and I appreciate his shows, and I appreciate the music from time to time. Sometimes it's just not speaking to me, and that's fine. But you cannot. I repeat, you cannot go into a rap battle and do that. I mean, and then just go back and cry. You can, man.
What song of his do you like?
There's a couple of songs that I like. A couple of songs that he did. A couple of songs that he did with what's his name there?
Yeah. Keep working hard. Come on.
Who's he talking
exactly.
Fine, I appreciate his music.
What music? Which ones did he write?
That's a different question.
This is part and parcel for the issue. We surprised that a phony in hip hop who never wrote his music is a phony and is a persona in everything he does.
I get what you're saying.
I mean, people just glossing over the ghostwriting thing like this is not a big deal to me was always a bizarre thing. Like, this dude is the definition of an industry plant, propped up by the industry, basically having other people make his artistry, and people are talking about he's the GOAT. How? What pen did he put on a paper? What beat did this guy produce? The dude is a glorified lip syncer as far as I'm concerned. But you guys want to sit here and tell me that he's the GOAT or whatever it is. Like, I don't even get mad at Drake no more because this is what the people wanted. They don't care about the reality of the situation. They don't care about who wrote it. They don't care about who produced it. They don't care about none of those details. So, is Drake corny and weird? Yeah, but he's the corny and weird that a lot of people deserve.
About a lot of people chose, like you said. I'm still gonna say that the trademark of Drake is good, but yeah, you don't go on around and be doing like, what kind of delusion do you have that you have to know what you are and what you represent, and you go after Pusha T, and then you're mad because he's vicious. Then you go after Kendrick, and then you're mad that he's vicious. My man, Kendrick said stuff that you said in your music yourself.
That's just like going up into the heavyweight division and then being mad because they punch hard.
Oh my God, they
like, bro, you
handed
want to
my
be seen
ass
as the
over to
coach?
me.
How you in the ring, stupid? So I mean, listen, it's a joke.
I'm gonna go tickle Mike Tyson's ears in his prime, and then fucking be mad when my head's spinning. Shit.
Why are you so mad, bro?
No, because that you have to have the commitment of taking an L. You know, when you engage with people and you take an L, you have to take it. You have to fucking take it. Yep. I've taken L's before. Shit, you step in the ring and sometimes, you do the sparring and the sparring don't go the way that you wanted to go. You take that L, you go back, you learn, you go back on the stage, and then you go back on the ring, and then you do another session. You know what I mean? People are not used to fucking taking L's. It happens. It's the circle of life. I said it before. You fuck around and find out, you take an L, and then after that, you just keep it moving, keep it pushing. But the minute they take an L, it's like it makes me feel the person that wants to squabble up with someone and then fights and then is losing, goes to his car and get a gat. You stupid. Everybody gonna call you a bitch. Oh yeah?
That's
oh
true.
yeah? You got your lip bump, like lip bloody and everything and stuff, and you're like, well, I got something for you. You run back to your car, shoot up the whole place. Okay, you shot the whole place, but you a bitch. Take your L. Just take it. It's right there. Fuck, I took a L. People are gonna have much more respect for you if you take that L than if you go and sue. God damn. You mad. Fuck. I'm done.
All right. Well, let Preach get his shit out. Hip hop look different. If you like it today, you like it. If you don't, you don't. But this is where it's going. It's going to keep going this direction. Because at the end of the day, it's not even just the people. Even the artists are cozying up to all the corny shit. People just don't have standards anymore. So.
People in bachata, the bachata beefs are more hard than the hip hop beefs.
Can't speak for that.
Fuck.
All right, let's see. Should we watch the parade? Here, let's see if I can pull it up. Let me see. Thanksgiving parade. Cool. Okay, let's make this a tradition. I do wish I at least could get some of the Thanksgiving dinner, though. I miss the stuffing. Here, I'm just gonna put it like that. Oh, damn. That's a big clown. Here, that way I can actually paint the way I want to paint instead of having to... Here, you know what? I'm gonna... Okay, this might not work, because I can't have these people just screaming in my ear the whole time. There's like a low rumble in the background, too. I don't like that. Let us try another video. Look at that. 8.3 thousand people watching. Madness! Let's see, what are we gonna forge? Bam, 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 bam. Oh, I'm still on Macy's Thanksgiving parade. Whoops, whoops. Huh? Oh. Oh man, is my algorithm gonna be a freaking... Oh god, dude, he made an hour 40-minute video on this psychopath. Oh. I don't know why I keep getting like presented Hassan content when I unfollowed him, because I used to watch him and then I realized he is not. He's just so like extreme. All right. Oh fuck! What just happened?
1996, and I remember the first time.
Wait, no. That's not what I... Look, it's me. All right, here we go. How about Thoughty 2?
Hey, 42 here.
So,
Robert Fleming Jr. was standing watch on the deck of a warship one evening when he saw a strange object in the water off the starboard bow. At first, he thought it was a log, but then he noticed the glint of what looked like metal. That was enough to raise his suspicions that turned to outright alarm when the weird metallic log started heading right for his ship. Fleming raised the alarm and everyone nearby carrying a gun opened fire on the approaching vessel. It was too late. An explosion shook the ship and 5 minutes later, it was gone. Sunk, as you may have already guessed, by a torpedo from a submarine. But this wasn't just any submarine, and the scene I just described wasn't just any old naval engagement. It was the first time in history that a submarine successfully sank an enemy ship in battle. But here's an odd question for you. When do you think it happened? If you guessed the First World War, then I don't blame you. It was during the First World War that submarines were first widely used. But the very first successful sub-attack took place a full half a century before Archduke Franz Ferdinand met his maker by way of an assassin's bullet. Robert Fleming Jr. didn't serve in the Great War. He was a sailor in the Union Navy during the American Civil War, and the ship he was serving on, the USS Housatonic, was sunk by a submarine called the H.L. Hunley 160 years ago, in 1864. The sinking of the USS Housatonic was a monumental moment in the history of warfare, but for the crew of the Hunley, the celebrations were short-lived. Shortly after the attack, eyewitnesses from both sides reported seeing a bright blue light on the water, a signal to shore from the Hunley's crew confirming that their mission was successful. It was the last trace anyone would ever see of them for more than a century. Because the history-making submarine never made it back to shore that night, and neither did its 8-man crew. In the decades after its demise, dozens of expeditions tried and failed to find the lost sub. And the fate of H.L. Hunley became one of the biggest mysteries of the entire Civil War. But in 1995, the wreck was found. 5 years later, it was painstakingly raised from its resting place on the ocean floor as the world held its breath. After more than a century of waiting, we were finally going to learn the fate of the first submarine ever to sink an enemy ship in battle. Or at least, that's what we thought. But then, things got weird. Displate is a platform for artists with thousands of creators from all across the globe sharing their unique designs, paintings, and illustrations on metal canvas. There are over 2 million artworks available in the Displate catalogue. Discover new original art or choose from officially licensed designs from the likes of Star Wars, Marvel, Elden Ring, and many other iconic brands and franchises. Displate has just launched a new product line called Displate Textra. They have tactile 3D textures, and they're now available. Look how easy and quick it was to display, or just use my code. Thanks to Displate for sponsoring this video. Before the wreck was recovered, the working theory was that the sub had sunk and the crew had drowned. But when archaeologists began studying the wreckage, what they found didn't seem to make any sense. When ships and submarines sink with their crews inside, a certain grisly pattern almost always emerges in the wreckage. The human remains are found clustered around the exit points. It makes sense. If you're trapped inside a sinking ship, there's only one place you're going to go. But the human remains inside the H.L. Hunley were arranged according to a very different pattern. The bones were found in neat little piles along the sub's interior. And that meant that every single member of the crew died at their station. Drowning men don't just sit calmly at their posts and wait to die. They fight for their lives with every ounce of strength they possess. But if the crew of the H.L. Hunley didn't drown that night, what the hell happened to them?
Probably like chlorine gas or something. Is what I'm guessing. Or exhaust.
Like most civil wars, the American Civil War was largely fought on land. Largely, but not entirely. Early on, President Abraham Lincoln, leader of the Union forces, realized that whoever held the Atlantic coast would control key trade and resupply routes to the east. In 1861, Lincoln implemented a vast naval blockade against the southern states. It was extremely effective, and the Confederates were soon looking for ways to break through. The question was how. There was no hope of beating Lincoln's fleet head-on. The Union not only had more ships, they had more shipyards to build new ones. If the Confederates wanted to break Lincoln's blockade, they were going to need to get creative. They say that desperation is the mother of all invention, and in 1863, Old Mother Desperation gave birth to the attack sub. Ouch.
God damn it.
Before it became part of military history, the name H.L. Hunley belonged not to a submarine, but to a man who was instrumental in developing it, Horace Lawson Hunley. The submarine that inherited his name after his untimely death, more on that in a minute, was incredibly basic by modern standards. In earlier designs, Hunley and his partners toyed with the idea of powering the submarine with a small steam engine. But given the time and technology constraints, in the end they settled for a significantly less high-tech source of propulsion: manpower. The Hunley was designed for a crew of 8 men, 1 to fill the role of captain, and 7 to power the hand crank that turned the propeller. With 7 men simultaneously cranking one out, the sub had a sprightly top speed of about 4 knots, the equivalent of a brisk walking
how'd they
pace
get
for us
oxygen down
landlubbers.
there? That's gotta be why they died.
Conditions for the men inside were brutal. You can see from this picture just how small the internal space was.
Oh.
The men couldn't even sit fully upright as they worked the crank. Just like the sub itself, the torpedo was very basic. To be honest, it was pretty much just a bomb on a stick. There was no propulsion system, so the only way to actually use
so it
it
just blew
was
them
to
up
get
too.
in close and stick it to the hull of the target ship. Despite its simplicity,
Really?
early tests were promising. In July 1863, the Hunley successfully sank an old coal barge anchored in Mobile Bay in front of a certain Admiral Franklin Buchanan, the only full admiral in the entire Confederate fleet. He was so impressed, he sent the sub to the key port city of Charleston by rail with a plan to use it against the Union blockade. Unfortunately, this early success was not to be replicated in Charleston, at least not at first. Not long after arriving, the Hunley sank whilst moored in the harbour. Some reports claim it was swamped by the wake of a passing boat, others that the captain accidentally trod on a lever that controlled the diving planes, submerging the sub with the hatches still open. The tiny interior and narrow hatches of the Hunley made it incredibly difficult to escape from, so what probably at first seemed like a minor incident soon turned deadly. 3 of the crew were able to swim to safety, but the remaining 5 were trapped inside as the Hunley was carried to the harbour floor. The experimental sub was recovered and patched up, but it wasn't long before disaster struck yet again. Less than 2 months after that first fatal accident, Horace Hunley himself was on board during a test of the sub's diving capabilities. The sub successfully submerged beneath the harbour waves, but something went wrong during the dive and all 8 men on board, including Horace Hunley, were drowned. You'd have forgiven the Confederates for binning the entire project right there and then. The HL Hunley had certainly proved itself to be deadly, just not to the enemy. But despite the mishaps, the Hunley was a genuinely revolutionary machine with the potential to swing the war in the Confederacy's favour. And so, the submarine was once again hauled up from the harbour floor and refitted, ready to launch against a Union blockade. The rest is history. Under cover of darkness on the 17th of February 1864, the HL Hunley succeeded in sinking the USS Housatonic, one of the mightiest ships in the Union fleet. All we need to do now is figure out what happened next. Let's start with the evidence. When the Hunley was salvaged in the year 2000, it was in one piece and the hatches were closed. But 2 large holes were found in the hull. The Hunley was equipped with both a ballast tank and removable keel weights, both of which could have been used to surface quickly in an emergency, but neither of these safety mechanisms were triggered by the crew. The remains of the 8 men on board were found in neat piles with very little mixing of the bones, indicating that they died at their respective stations within the sub. The bones also showed no signs of any damage, for example from an explosion. Finally, the wreck of the Hunley was found 275 meters further out to sea than the wreck of the USS Housatonic. For some reason, it had traveled in exactly the wrong direction after the attack. Okay, that's the evidence. But what does it all mean? Let's start by ruling out what is probably the first thing to spring to mind when a sub is lost at sea. Implosion. There's no chance whatsoever that the Hunley imploded, because the wreck was found just 9 meters beneath the surface, nowhere near crush depth. The most striking feature of the recovered wreck were the 2 big holes in the hull. One theory was that the Hunley was accidentally rammed by the USS Canandaigua, which arrived on the scene not long after the attack to look for the Union survivors. A catastrophic failure of the hull would explain why the crew didn't try to surface. They wouldn't have had the time. But it isn't a great fit for the rest of the evidence. The Canandaigua was a very big ship. If it had crashed into the Hunley, the damage would likely have been a lot worse than just 2 holes. There's also the small matter of the positioning of the crew in the wreck. They might not have had time to release the keel weights or engage the ballast pump, but they would have had time to try and swim out of the hatches. They might not have made it, but if they tried, their remains would have been found clustered around the hatches with significantly more mixing of the bones. The theory was dismissed for good in the early 2000s when scientists analysing sediment deposits inside the wreckage determined that the holes in the hull didn't appear until long after the sinking. They weren't the telltale signs of a catastrophic accident. They were scars earned in a different kind of battle. One fought over many decades against the dual effects of erosion and corrosion on the ocean floor. We can also rule out the most popular theory of the Civil War era, that a lucky shot fired from the deck of the USS Housatonic either hit the Hunley's captain, a man called George Dixon, or pierced the hull and caused a leak. In a 2017 study, scientists investigating the mystery showed that Civil War-era rifles were powerful enough to puncture the sub's hull. But even if there was a so-called lucky shot, the crew would have recognized the danger and reacted. The positioning of the bones in the wreckage and the lack of use of the ballast pump and keel weights proves that didn't happen. The same can be said for many of the theories about the sinking. The fact that the crew didn't seem to have reacted to their impending death is extremely weird and hard to explain. It's almost as though they didn't know they were in danger. So then, any ideas? In modern submarines, fresh oxygen is typically supplied either by pressurized tanks or generated on board through the electrolysis of water, which uses electricity to split H2O into its constituent parts, hydrogen and oxygen. This second method is especially handy because it means you can get more oxygen whenever you need it directly from the seawater your sub is floating in. But of course, the Hunley was very far from being a modern submarine. Its oxygen was provided by way of a couple of snorkel tubes attached to a set of bellows.
Genius.
At best, it likely wasn't a very effective system, and according to one former crewman, it didn't really function at all. Even if the Hunley's snorkels actually worked, they could only supply fresh air near the surface. During a deeper dive, the sub became a closed system
Oh, so they basically
with a
went
limited
crazy
supply of oxygen.
and just fell
So
asleep.
what if that supply simply ran out?
Or they just fell asleep.
Death by asphyxiation would explain how the crew died despite a lack of obvious damage to the sub. More importantly, it might also explain the most mysterious aspect of the whole case, why the crew appeared to have died without ever moving from their stations. It's a weird quirk of
That
human
crazy
physiology
crew.
that our bodies aren't very good at detecting and responding to low levels of oxygen in our tissues, a condition known as hypoxia. If someone removed all the oxygen from the
There's
room you're
some
sitting
pretty
in right
epic
now
music
and
going on in
replaced
the
it with,
background.
say, nitrogen, you'd quickly asphyxiate without ever realizing that something was wrong. What if something similar happened to the crew? If oxygen levels in the sub dropped fast enough, theoretically they might have died without recognizing that they were in danger. And if they didn't know they were in danger, they would have had no reason to leave their stations or attempt to surface. It all fits, but before we get carried away, there's a complication. Whilst it's true that the human body is relatively poor at detecting low levels of oxygen, it's extremely good at detecting high levels of CO2, a condition called hypercapnia. If CO2 levels in the sub climbed high enough, the crew would have experienced headaches, confusion, sleepiness, and a shortness of breath. Crucially, they would have known immediately what these symptoms meant. They'd completed several long test dives for exactly that purpose. If any of the crew had shown signs of
that's weird.
hypercapnia the night the Hunley was lost, they would have surfaced immediately.
Maybe
Better
they
to
couldn't.
take your chances with the enemy than face certain death by asphyxiation. So what does all this mean for the theory? Well, to put it simply, death by asphyxiation is only a valid explanation for the loss of the Hunley if the crew experienced hypoxia, which they might not have noticed before they experienced hypercapnia, which they definitely would have. So which way around was it? In 2016, a team of scientists decided to find out. They used the dimensions of the wreck to determine the volume of air the Hunley would have held. Then modelled how quickly both hypoxia and hypercapnia would have set in using a range of different respiratory rates for the crew. In every single simulation the team ran, they got the same basic result. Hypercapnia always kicked in long before hypoxia. If the crew asphyxiated that night, they would have known it was happening well in advance. It isn't definitive, but it's a very strong indication that death by asphyxiation is not our answer here. As soon as those hypercapnia symptoms kicked in, they would have headed straight for the surface. Since the ballast pump wasn't used and the keel weights were untouched, we know that they didn't.
What is it right now in Europe?
So, the sub wasn't damaged, it wasn't a lucky shot, and the crew probably didn't
It's like the
asphyxiate.
middle of the night.
What else even is there? If you're starting to run out of ideas, you aren't alone. For several years, nobody really had a convincing answer to this
Did they
question.
drown?
But a new discovery in 2013
Oh
changed
wait, yeah,
everything.
that's the whole thing.
When the Hunley was first found, the spar that once held the torpedo was still attached. With archaeologists initially focused on the sub itself, the spar
type
wasn't investigated in much detail until 2013, at which point they realised it had been hiding a potentially game-changing piece of the H.L. Hunley's puzzle. According to the original design, the sub-spar torpedo was triggered remotely by way of a rope. The sub would ram the torpedo into the side of the target ship, leaving the payload behind. Then it would reverse to a distance of about 30 meters, at which point a rope attached to the payload would trigger the explosion. But when a thick layer of concretion was removed from the spar in 2013, we found something completely unexpected. Part of the copper casing that made up the torpedo's payload. What little metal remained had been folded backwards like paper. But what was it doing there? The entire payload was supposed to be left stuck to the side of the Housatonic before it exploded. If part of it was still attached to the spar, which itself was still attached to the sub, it could only mean one thing. The H.L. Hunley was still attached to its torpedo when it exploded. After a bit more detective work, archaeologists realized that the entire trigger mechanism for the torpedo had been changed at the very last minute. This version wasn't triggered at range by a rope. It was pressure sensitive. When the Hunley rammed the USS Housatonic 160 years ago, its torpedo exploded immediately on impact, which means the sub and its crew weren't chilling 30 meters away like we thought. They were separated from the explosion by the length of the spar, just 5 meters.
Oh, so they
At
got
first, it
fucking
might not be obvious
shockwave.
why that's such a big deal. We already know the Hunley's hull wasn't significantly
Oh,
damaged before
dude.
it sank.
When you're like underwater,
Those two
it makes
holes
it worse,
appeared much
too.
later on, and we know that the crew's bones were undamaged. But just because the hull and the crew survived the explosion in one piece, that doesn't mean they didn't suffer catastrophic damage. When explosives detonate, they generate a high-pressure wave that expands outwards from the center of the explosion. This wave is made up of molecules, usually air, but in this case water, that have been smushed together. It can be incredibly destructive. Now that we know the Hunley was so close to the explosion that sank the Housatonic, is it possible that the crew died in the resulting blast wave? In a word, yes. The wave would have passed right through the hull of the sub, right through the air inside, and right through the crew. The effects of high-pressure blast waves on the human body are not pleasant. Being
No
full of air,
good.
our lungs are particularly badly affected. A powerful blast wave can essentially tear them to pieces, leaving the victim coughing up blood and unable to breathe. Blast waves can also damage the brain, traveling right through the skull and causing hemorrhaging. These kinds of injuries are often fatal. If the crew of the Hunley were hit by a powerful blast wave, it could have killed them instantly, or left them incapacitated and unable to respond to the various dangers of their situation. A 2017 study attempted to test the blast wave theory using a scale model of the Hunley and a proportionately miniaturized black powder torpedo. Based on the results of those tests, the paper concluded that each member of the crew would have had a 95% chance of suffering severe pulmonary trauma and an 84% chance of death. No reconstruction is ever perfect, so the results aren't completely conclusive, but the evidence is extremely compelling. The blast wave theory
Oh, shit, it's
explains
like
why the
1:30
crew
in the
never left their
morning
stations
in
and
Europe.
why they didn't try to save themselves. It also explains why the sub was found on the wrong side of the Housatonic. If the crew died almost immediately, the Hunley would have simply drifted out on the outgoing tide before bottoming out. So, there you have it.
Why does
This
that keep going on? I can't see
160-year-old
it.
mystery has finally been solved. The crew of the H.L. Hunley were either killed or incapacitated by a blast wave from the explosion of the very torpedo that put them in the history books. Or were they? It's true that the blast wave theory is very convincing. But there is one piece of evidence in this infuriating puzzle that still doesn't fit. I've already mentioned it in this video. Did you spot it? Let's rewind. Shortly after the sinking of Housatonic, eyewitnesses from both sides reported seeing a bright blue light on the water, a signal to shore from the Hunley's crew confirming that their mission was successful. It was the last trace anyone would ever see of them for more than a century. The blue light in question was essentially a primitive kind of flare, and it had to be triggered by hand. But if the crew were incapacitated or killed by the explosion that destroyed the Housatonic, who set off the flare? The answer is, of course, that we have no idea. Supporters of the blast theory typically dismiss the sightings of the blue light as being down to unreliable eyewitness accounts. That's certainly possible. Eyewitnesses are rubbish. But it is a hell of a coincidence that sailors on both sides independently reported having seen the exact same signal. Maybe one or more of the crew of the Hunley was still in good enough shape after the blast to light the flare. Maybe someone else set off the pyrotechnics for a completely different reason. Or maybe the blast wave theory is simply incorrect, and we're still missing some key evidence needed to unlock this mystery. For now, we simply have no way of knowing. And unless the wreck of the HL Hunley has a few more secrets to give up, we likely never will. At least, not for sure. Personally, I hope the blast wave theory is correct. Of all the ways those 8 men may have died that night, near instant death by blast wave would probably have resulted in the least suffering. But before I leave you on this one, I have one more story to tell you about this incredible Civil War sub.
Okay.
It isn't directly related to the mystery, but it's too cool not to share.
Man, nobody's watching
Long before
tonight.
the wreck of the Hunley was
I don't usually
rediscovered,
play that.
descendants of the sub's final captain, George Dixon, passed down a kind of family.
I don't normally stream at nighttime, but I figured there'd be some people on during Thanksgiving. Oh, what time is it on the West Coast, actually? I just realized that. Is everybody here right now? Oh no, it's 7:30. I feel like everybody be done with dinner by now. Or at least like eating dessert. Or arguing about politics. Or getting disowned by their family or something, you know. I'm actually really happy I don't have to do any of that today. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Alright. I guess I don't really need to rush to put something on. Nobody's watching anyway. Okay. Oh, that looks so gross. That's paint. I'll see you in court, baby. Give me new stuff. Give me new stuff. Give me new stuff. Give me new stuff. Yeah. Really, it's rocking everywhere. Real underground cities you didn't know exist. Ooh, all right.
In the
Joe
classic
Scott.
sci-fi novel The Time Machine by
Show me
H.G.
what's
Wells,
up.
our hero travels forward in time to the years 802,701, where he finds that humanity is split into 2 species. The Eloi, a gentle childlike race of people who don't seem capable of negative emotions, and a race of monstrous subterranean ghouls named the Morlocks that come out
yeah, I
at night
love
to
that
feed on the
movie.
Eloi. And that's something of a trope in literature. You know, the underground world represents darkness and evil. It's associated with death and burial, even hell. So, of course, any creatures or people that come out of that place are depicted as more feral or lawless or animalistic. So what does it say about us that we kind of came out of that place? Some of our earliest dwellings were in caves, some of which stretched far underground, so it was basically like living underground. And it worked. It was a way to escape the elements, avoid predators, defend ourselves from enemies, and enjoy the comfort of a tight-knit community. Not to mention the walls are excellent for drawing on. And while our ability to construct habitats for all those purposes has advanced massively over the hundreds of thousands of years since then, we've never really fully stopped going underground. In fact, there could be somebody living underneath you right now.
Underneath me?
Today, most underground places are used for military operations, like the Cheyenne Mountain Complex in Colorado, the Raven Rock Mountain Complex in Pennsylvania, and the Shizan Air Force Base in Taiwan. That could be a whole video of its own, but that's not really what I want to focus on today. I want to talk about places where people actually live and do business, and all the various reasons they choose to do that underground. So I'm breaking these into several different categories: ancient or historical sites, homeless and squatter communities, retail and workspace, legal incorporated underground cities, and underground cities of the future. So let's start with some ancient cities, some of which may have been abandoned and lost to time. Some actually have found a new purpose in the modern days, usually for illegal activities.
Ooh, so much room for activities.
Usually these ancient cities popped up.
Sitting in such a messed up
pop down.
position. My back is.
Can you pop up underground? Either way, these cities arose or descended. Anyway, there were usually people hiding from persecution. Like take Derinkuyu in Cappadocia, Turkey, for example. It's one of the world's largest and deepest cities. The Hittites originally built it in the 8th century BCE. They were followed by the Phigarians, who developed it later before the Byzantines and the Christians expanded it in the 8th and 7th centuries AD. So yeah, it goes back a bit. Derinkuyu is a network of tunnels and rooms spread out over 18 levels. It goes down 85 meters. You could almost fit the Statue of Liberty into Derinkuyu. The city was designed to offer protection and shelter to a local population during war times or when they were persecuted. It has a large storage area for food and supplies and a water supply system that features channels and wells. It's estimated that up to 20,000 people could live inside Derinkuyu. Another ancient underground city is the Napoli Sotterranea in Naples, Italy. It spreads out over 80 kilometers under the city streets. And
yeah, my idea was always like, if I ever was, ultra rich or was like able to have my own land somewhere, that I would love to build like a massive underground, just superstructure. And then at the top, just it being like, it would just look like a normal, log cabin. I would love that. And you could take a giant slide down. It'd be cool if you could I could buy land that's over the top of a mine, like an old big ass salt mine or something. That would be sick. Someday.
And it's more than 2,400 years old. The Greeks first created it, and then later the Romans expanded on it and used it as a storage area and a water source. But during the 17th and 18th centuries, criminals used it as a black market hub, moving around all kinds of illegal goods through the tunnels. Later in World War II, the residents of Naples used it as a shelter from enemy bombs. One of the most popular underground attractions is the Bourbon Tunnel. It's a series of tunnels that was built in the 19th century during King Ferdinand's reign. It was a way for the royal palace to connect with the military barracks so that people could transport supplies between the two. And this is a huge one. The Napoli Sotterranea could house up to 500,000 people. Just for perspective, that's the size of Atlanta, Georgia. The entire city of Atlanta, Georgia. Underground. Giant. Another underground city that's not quite so old is Guanajuato in central Mexico. It's also known as Los Túneles de Guanajuato, and it was built in the 16th century as a way to transport silver from the mines to smelting factories. In the 19th century, revolutionaries during the Mexican War of Independence used the tunnels as hideouts. And one of the most popular attractions in the tunnels is the Museo de los Momias, or the Museum of the Mummies. They actually collected a bunch of naturally mummified bodies from a nearby cemetery and now house them there. So, yeah, that's creepy. Further north in Canada, there's an underground city beneath the town of Moose Jaw in Saskatchewan. It was originally built in the early 1900s to provide cooling and heating to the city's downtown buildings, but they really got a lot of use in the 1920s. Yeah, when Prohibition went into effect in the United States, it opened up a lucrative opportunity for the enterprising smuggler to move Canadian alcohol across the border, so yeah, they use those tunnels to move their product around unnoticed. Today, the tunnels still provide cooling, heating, and other services to the above-ground buildings, but it's thought that they could house up to 1,000 people, should they need to. So most of these places are now tourist attractions for the most part, but at one time, people did live there. usually to.
Yeah, I remember like that when at the high school I went to, um, it actually got demolished and rebuilt a couple years ago. But when I went there, we had a fallout shelter that was from the, like the 50s or something. And it was like it was insane how big it was. Like I'm pretty sure it was enough for like the entire town at the time or something. I might be wrong, but it was like it was gigantic, and our history teacher wasn't supposed to like let us like look down there, but he would take classes down there all the time to like just show what it was like, or like, and there was like still like old ass food down there, like canned food. It's really cool.
Escape persecution or because they had dropped out of society for one reason or another. And in some places today, that's still the case. Like in Las Vegas, there's an estimated 1,500 people living in the 600 miles of tunnels under the city. Then you have New York City, where it's believed that more than 2,000 people live underground. These people often live in the forgotten parts of the city's subway system. This practice got started around the Great Depression. By the way, the New York subway tunnel entrances are easy to get into, but it is illegal to enter them, the closed off sections anyway. The people who live down there are often marred by drug and alcohol abuse. Mental illness is prevalent, obviously, but there are some people who just hit some hard times, so some whole families live down there. And it's just like any other community. There's like a hierarchy for those who live underground in New York. Yeah, there's a whole world down there that's kind of reflective of what's going on above ground, but to a much more dangerous degree. No, there have been some great documentaries made about the mole people, as they're sometimes called. And no, I find it interesting how people will just kind of organize naturally and create communities and rules and structures that give a sense of order to people, even in really weird situations. And in a way, it makes me think of the Kowloon walled city. Like one way or another, people will just make it work. But it's not always gritty and grime underground. Sometimes they bring out the glitz and glamour too. Take, for example, Shinjuku Subnod, an underground shopping mall in the Shinjuku neighborhood in Tokyo. It opened in 1973 to help curb traffic congestion and offer retail space for the city's growing population. And it's one of the world's largest shopping centers. It offers hundreds of retail outlets and restaurants across multiple levels. It also features movie theaters, gaming arcades, and karaoke bars. It's almost like they moved downtown Las Vegas underground. But the Subnod is just retail and food. No people live there that we know of anyway. Now over in Montreal, Canada, there's Réseau. It's a network of buildings and tunnels spreading 32 kilometers underneath the streets that attracts millions of visitors every year.
What?
And it's used by 500,000 people every single day. Réseau was developed in the 1960s as a solution to the winter weather conditions that can be pretty harsh in Montreal. But since then, it's kind of turned into a huge tourist attraction and a popular place to eat and shop for both visitors and locals as well. It features restaurants, retail space, movie theaters, nightclubs, an ice skating rink, performance spaces, and a library. It also has a huge art collection of more than 100 works of art. There's even an annual 5K run that they do throughout the tunnels. Another massive shopping center can be found in Helsinki, Finland. It's called, and God help me here, Helsingfors Underjordiska. The best I'm gonna get. It's 300,000 square meters in size, and it features shopping centers, restaurants, a hockey rink, go-kart track, swimming pool, and a church. And it uses geothermal heating to help reduce energy consumption and lower carbon emissions. Now, all of this was planned and built just in case the country ever went to war with Russia, because there was always a little bit of tension going on between the two. So the underground space that they built, it can house up to 600,000 people. Now, not all the spaces are open to the public, but the church there is a huge tourist spot. It gets over 500,000 tourists every year. So maybe after that, they can go on a go-kart race or take a swim or do a 5K run. In Beijing, there's another underground city that was built out of fear of war with Russia. It's called the Daxiaqiang, and China and Russia have been having border spats going back hundreds of years, but yeah, during the Cold War, Chairman Mao wasn't going to take any chances. So as part of his glorious Cultural Revolution, he made the building of an underground city a major priority. Construction began in the 1970s, and it was every citizen's duty to help out. Much of it was dug out by hand by both adults and children. It eventually spread over 52 square miles, and it features bomb shelters, factories, schools, retail shops, movie theaters, and even a skating rink. And the whole thing was entered through secret passages in the shops above the surface, some of which actually had maps on the walls in invisible ink so that only the locals who were in the know would be able to read it. It was designed to be capable of housing 300,000 people for 4 months, but once the Soviet Union fell apart, they kind of stopped expanding it, eventually stopped maintaining it. It eventually was open for tourists, but interestingly, only foreign tourists were allowed in. Chinese citizens couldn't actually go down there. But when the Olympics were held in Beijing in 2008, the city was massively renovated, and many of the shops that had those secret entrances were destroyed. So yeah, at this point, most of Daxia-Cheng has been forgotten, so many think that it'll never reopen. Of course, since it's been abandoned, there have been a lot of homeless people that have moved down there. So it's thought that there's probably several thousand people that live down there right now. But if you want to talk about a full-on, like, legal incorporated city that's almost entirely underground, there's really only one thing you got to talk about, and that's Coober Pedy, Australia. The town's located 950 kilometers northwest of Adelaide, and it was founded in 1915 when a young boy apparently found opals just laying around on the ground, so mining operations were soon established. Fun fact, the name Coober Pedy is a corruption of the Aboriginal phrase Coober Pedy, which means water hole or white man in a hole. Temperatures there can get up to 52 degrees Celsius. That's about 125 degrees Fahrenheit. So yeah, because of that insane heat.
All right, guys, girls, friends. I think I'm gonna call it. We got nobody watching tonight. And I think what I'm gonna do is go watch that movie, The Substance, because I've been wanting to watch that, and my daughter's not gonna be back for a couple hours, I think. So I think I'm gonna just smoke a couple joints and chill out. Watch a movie. I wish I could just do it on stream, but rules, you know. All right. I am. Oh my god. There we go. Alrighty, guys. I will see you tomorrow. I'll be streaming in the morning. Have a great Thanksgiving. Eat that turkey. And don't kill your family members over politics. Remember, politics isn't worth it. All right. And